have exams coming up, so I've got to be really fast with this. In a world of Disney remakes, like we got one a month ago, Lilo and Stitch, and clearly there's a market here for these kind of movies, for DreamWorks to finally give in to this like zonelessness and carve out one of their own with the How to Train a Dragon remake. And I've had my eye on this movie since it was announced, and I'm pleased to say it's probably one of the better remakes that I have watched in this period. But that statement also has its caveats, because the original movie was already a really good film, as most of these movies, original films, are before they do get remade. But this was the only one that took that bold but boring step to just copy and paste itself and add CGI characters in this real life with real people and real sets, and where it will be easy to also just sit here and just like talking about how shitty that is. I can also praise the film, especially the director, for standing his ground, because they were always going to remake the film with or without him. So the fact that he came back in and just said, no, screw that, I'm gonna direct this movie my own way, the exact same way he did it before, and I'm just gonna like, you know, make a good movie. Because at the end of the day, like, you could have had the Lilo and Stitch effect, you could have had like, which other bad remake came out? Pinocchio. You could have had like one of them films, but the fact that he stood his ground, and you see some of the reviews saying like this movie had no charm or any of that, and to me, I'll argue this movie had way more charm than the original. It could just be that bias of, okay, I'm having a new film to gobble up, but still, I really enjoyed this. Like, I did a video on the original movie and I had major issues with that film. Lo and behold, in this movie, every single issue, not all of them, but most of them were fixed. I mean, it's the bare minimum to fix the problem you had with the original. Like, obviously, as a creative, you would watch that movie back to back to back and be like, oh, I wish I could have done this better and I wish I did that. Yeah, but like, the fact that he did it, like, we have to applaud him for that. And you also fix it without fucking up what made the original great. That being the characters get more to do, for example, like Snotlot. Like, I did not know any of their names till the third movie. And even Astrid, go and watch the original film and you really do not see Astrid and Hiccup interact in the film to like towards the end, which is kind of dumb, especially when you're building her up to be this love interest. And this movie does fix that. You see Hiccup at the start. Obviously, you see Hiccup at the start, even in the animated one, that he like sees that she's pretty and everything. But here, like, it still follows up throughout the entire film, as well as giving the background characters more to do. Like Snotlot, for example, he has a father in this. The rest of them still, I can't lie, they still linger a bit and they don't do much, but it's still more than what the original film had. I also feel this movie improved on Hiccup and Stoic's relationship, especially with that build up at the start. Maybe I could be delusional again, as I said, but I feel like those parts still improved. And there's this one scene I liked in the original movie that just felt a bit better here. But that's the thing with this movie. Most of these parts just felt a bit better. And that could be also down to the performances. I think everyone is great. Gerard Butler reprising his role as Stoic, I think he does an amazing job. As well as Nick Frost as Gobber. I think he's really, really good. I don't know, did he voice that same character in the last movie? I think he does a really good job here. I think that was perfect casting. And as for the kids, I think there were slight of elements that you could have been like, okay, they could have delivered this line in a better way. And I also think their acting at times did come off a bit cringy, but I feel like that's what you get with like younger actors in general. But overall, I think Mason Thames as Hiccup was really, really good. He acted like this scrawny, pewy, like little kid, and I think he really did a good job. I'm surprised to see that he's 17. I thought he'd be way younger. So the fact that he could get that characterization of Hiccup on screen, especially from like the cartoon films, I think he did a really good job. As well as Nico Parker as Astrid, I think she was a really good Astrid. But also, with all this praise, I won't lie, there are parts of this movie that I did not like. For example, when Toothless spits out the fish, Hiccup had to eat the head part of the fish, not the tail. In the animated movie, it was the goddamn tail. How do you mess that up? Okay, I'm just joking. But Astrid, they took her character to a place I was intrigued to see at the start. This is something I did like at the start. But then she says this one line. I'm not going to spoil it. If you want to watch this movie, you would hear that line. And I feel like it was so unnecessary to add that line. I feel like if you didn't add that line, nothing spoils. But the fact that you added it, but you didn't build it up to anything, it just felt useless. Why would you add that? But at the same time, it's just like one line and it doesn't really mean anything. I also like the fact that rivalry was more prevalent here. We see it in the animated movie, but like as I'm saying, this movie did have that longer runtime, so it did have more time to add to specific aspects. That's why I'm saying this movie is just slightly better. But one thing I found dumb that they removed from the original film is at the end of the film, like towards the end of the film, when Hiccup defeats the antagonist, on quotes, it was sort of a bookend of something that happened maybe like 30 minutes prior. So the fact that they didn't add that just felt a bit, it felt like, I don't want to use the word undeserved, but it felt like something was missing, especially since like we've watched the original. We know that he learned that from something that he saw Toothless do. So the fact that they removed that, but they still ended the movie the same way. This is completely nitpicking right here, but like it just feels something was missing, which is a bit annoying. But see, overall, to me, I'm just confused as to what the point of this film was rather than to make money. Because I feel like as remakes go, this is the one that like completely touches a new generation. I feel like this is the one that touches my generation in particular. Because all those Disney remakes that have been happening, I think apart from Moana, but that's not out yet. But out with all those remakes, maybe Lilo and Stitch, but I watched that when I was young, but like, it doesn't have that attachment as to like, let's say, How to Train a Dragon does. So I feel like this is this untapped nostalgia that these companies are going to feed off of. Because as I mentioned, this is the first one that like I grew up with. So obviously since the first trailer, since it was announced, I have been anticipating this movie, and I don't know, I feel a bit disappointed, but at the same time, I did like it. Like, if I was to blindly rate this movie, it's still the same as the last movie, but the fact that like it just feels pointless and soulless, I feel like it should be rated lower. So my biased opinion is saying you should go watch this movie. It's good, but in reality, save yourself the $10 or whatever and just watch the original, because you're not missing anything outside the fact that this is a real life movie. I think the CGI for the most part is really good, and the dragons did get the balance between being a monster and making them these cute creatures, like Toothless in particular with that. I think they nailed it. It was really good. And I did say that the movie improved on the original, but it was only like maybe 15% at best. It just had more time, which I did mention, and it did positive stuff with that extra time it did have. But reality just waits to stream it. But since Lilo and Stitch is going to make $1 billion, I'd rather this movie be that hit. So please go watch it. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Watch my video of why I love the original trilogy. Peace.